Okay, hello everybody. My name is Jani Aaltonen, Sales Communications. Mun nimi on Jani Aaltonen Sales Communicationsilta. Ja se mitä me tänään tehdään, niin me ollaan mun mökillä. Kattokaa tuota biitsiä. Eikö se ole ihan magea? Yeah, we are at my country place, and what we're going to do is we're going to run through today a webinar together with HubSpot. The topic is selling with empathy through COVID-19. And before we go on, I've asked questions like, where do you guys are? Where do you come from? And where are you watching this webinar? And somebody is watching from Kouvola at the home office. One is from Espoo, Helsinki. Somebody is outside at the terrace. I hope you're at the home terrace and not at the public terrace. And somebody is from Seinäjoki, Oulu, Vaasa. Tomas Riis Jensen is the Irish Hills of Wicklow Mountains, and so on. Somebody's from Tampere, and so on. This is how we roll in these modern times when we are doing selling and global selling through online channels. Few ideas before we go on. Let me share my screen, and here you go. And you can see my screen. DigitalSalesDay.fi. That's the place to go on to every webinar. We are running every webinar, all the webinars, 2 o'clock till Monday to Friday. Obviously, this Friday when it's Easter and next Monday when it's Easter Monday, we are not doing it, but we will continue tomorrow and then on Monday. The basic idea is that we want to help you sell more on a digital environment in the internet for the whole month, and that this is for free. And every session, every webcast, we will put on the Digital Sales Day website, so you can see those. A few things just to remind you. When you go to the Digital Sales Day FI, you will see a pop-up there on the left-hand corner, and that means that you can download a tool pack for selling digitally. One is the digital business card, which basically means that you can embed video, you can tell about yourself, you can put all the information about yourself, you can put your calendar, which you can send to your customer, give your customer chance to download, to book a meeting with you, and you can tell a little bit about yourself. So that's a cool thing, and that's for free, and just sign it up. And you can also get the CEO's guide to digital marketing and marketing automation, and you can also get the guide for inbound sales. And I think that the inbound sales, which we're going to talk about soon, is the thing for modern times. So go on and download the digital business card for you. But now, enough for me. We will give Tomas Riis Jensen the stage to talk about how do you sell through empathy, with empathy through COVID-19. So Tomas, welcome, and great that we got you.
Thank you very much, Jani. Thanks for the introduction. Lovely to virtually meet you all. Yeah, so as Jani mentioned, I am with HubSpot. I have the pleasure of working with Jani and Sales Communications on a daily basis. I'll be working with the top partners in HubSpot, and obviously Sales Communications is one of our very top partner in the Finnish and the Scandinavian market. And let me just see if I can share my screen here. You see my agenda, all right?
Yes, yeah. We can.
Perfect. Okay,
yeah. By the way, before you crack on, one thing: if you have any questions, put it on the chat pane. Like, make the chat, put it on fire, and we can talk through chat, and we will answer all your questions when we got them. So that's good.
Yeah. So. Perfect. +1 to that, guys. We want to keep this as conversational as possible. I realize it's over chat, but address your questions as we go along. So please just put it in there, right? Now, what we're going to be talking to today is, like, obviously we moved into a new world here with the COVID-19, right? And everyone is kind of challenged with at the moment, how do we interact with that in our personal lives as well as in our professional life, right? And how do we sell in times like this? And, you know, that's the challenge that we in HubSpot are faced with as well. So what I'm going to present to you today is what we do internally in HubSpot. Also, how we work with a lot of our partners around it. I know Sales Communications has a fantastic structure around how they work with it as well. And I know Yanni will be sharing that as well. So there's got to be two things we'll focus in on. First of all, the psychology of selling in uncertain times like this. Like and uncertain times like COVID-19, that's definitely an uncertain time for us all. We also, back in 08, 09, we had the economic crash, again, uncertain times that kind of destabilized how we run business, how we sell. We had the 9/11 back in 2001. We had our crises back in the 90s and the 80s as well. So this is something we meet now and again, right? And we need to address it. We need to work with how do we talk to our prospects and our customers? How do we best add value to their everyday when we are in a time like this? But also, how do we meet them on their terms? That's the first thing I'll talk about, right? So what is the psychology we are up against? Then the second thing is, I just want to talk to you about the framework for selling through COVID-19. Again, this is the framework that we use in HubSpot. I know Sales Communications, they have built out a great framework as well that is aligned with what we do. So just to give you examples of how can you kind of still run your business and sell and ensure to add value that is relevant to your customers with this very difficult situation that they all find themselves in, right? I'd love to, if you want to, I'd love for you to just to put into the chat what industry that you're in, right? So obviously I'm with HubSpot. We sell SaaS, so software as a service, across marketing, sales, service, and CMS. I'd love to just get an overview of what industries you guys are in. Now, next slide. So if we start on psychology of selling in, yeah, sorry, Yanni.
No problem. There's a few people. One is from MedTech, one is a sales coaching, one is a billing automation and SaaS solution, one is from chemical industry. So we have various type of industries. Can you put it on the chat page? Are you B2B or B2C or both? Like B2B, B2C, both. So it's B2B management consulting, C-level, B2B both, B2B sales, B2B. So yeah, a lot of people is from B2B, few is from both. Photo and video productions, a lot of services, different types of industries.
Okay, very good. Like we're gonna be talking about some general things to do here, right? But obviously it looks like we have kind of a common theme here around the B2B space anyway. So we'll be addressing that as well as we go along here. Now, first of all, the psychology of selling, right? So we kind of, if you look at the right-hand side here, we're looking at Kubler-Ross grief cycle, right? That's typically, again, no matter what crisis you're faced with, that is a pattern that we see with a lot of people, both in their personal life as well as their professional life, right? And you can probably recognize some of it with yourselves, right? I know I can. Like if we start at the left-hand side, let me just get my pointer on. Here we go. What we typically first meet is the denial phase. I know I certainly did with the COVID-19. You see in the news what's going on. You're kind of like, my reaction was like, this is a bit like a movie I'm sitting watching. I can see something is going on in China. It's moving to Italy. Surely this couldn't really come to Ireland, where I live at the moment. And obviously it did, right? So we're kind of, I'm well beyond that denial phase. At this stage, what a lot of people then move into is kind of the anger stage, right? We're faced with a crisis situation here. It's frustrating, it's irritating. Everything seems a little out of our hands, both in our personal life as well as our professional life, right? And from that stage, a lot of people and a lot of companies will move into the depression phase, right? So we are really getting an understanding of, okay, this is serious, right? We can't really go into the office anymore. We have to work from home. Our kids' schools are closed. A lot of shops are closed. Like we're faced with a situation that's overwhelming, and we, to some extent, feel helpless here, right? You might experience that situation yourself. I'd say a lot of you probably experience customers of yours as well that is in that situation. Like a typical pattern you see with customers that are in that depression phase is that they kind of pull back at this stage, right? You might have had a sales conversation with them, and now they're coming back to you and going, guys, we're going to freeze all assets at this time. We're not going to make any investments for the next 3 months. We're going to wait and see what happens with the COVID here. And then in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, we're going to be reviewing budgets again. That's a classic and very understandable reaction, right, when you're in that depression phase. Now, when companies start moving out of that, you might be moved out of that yourselves. You might have customers that are moving out of that yourselves, right? That's typically when you move into that, what we call here the bargaining phase. When I say we, the Kubler-Ross grief cycle calls that, right? That's when you start moving out of that depression phase. You're like, okay, we're faced with a new situation. We have to start dealing with that. I'm starting to do research now. How can I keep running my private life as well as how can I keep running my professional life? How can I keep growing my business in this new world that we're faced with, right? That's when you start reaching out. And when you enter into the acceptance phase, that's when you're really starting to adapt. You're really starting to go, this has changed. This is how I have run my business in the past. These are the directions that I need to take my business in order to keep growing it and keep it running. A classic example of that at the moment is a lot of companies would have an outside sales team, right? Field sales that live in the car, go out and meet companies, face-to-face meetings. Like obviously that's a reality a lot of us has moved out of at this stage and move into inside sales, do sales over video and phone and so on. Yanni, do we
Thomas,
have
question? Yes. How do we have a question here on the chat pane? So how do early adopters react with the depression phase? I'm not sure what the question is, but how do early adopters react in the depression phase? Let me see if you think. I'll give my own personal what happened to me. It was exactly like you said that it couldn't happen to me. So this is not for us. This is not for Finland. We are a bit like Ireland. We are in a kind of island in up north. So it doesn't affect us. But then comes that situation that we started to see that the customers are saying, okay, we're postponing, and we have to move home. So everybody's like, okay, what is happening? And then comes the depression phase. Actually, this is a really depressing thing. One of my friends died yesterday on a COVID-19 in a hospital. Actually, not from the hospital. He got out from the hospital, but he passed away. So that's kind of a really serious thing. And now you start to see that it's going to happen to you in your family and in your place. So we're getting like really in serious situation. And this is something that we face when we are talking with the customers. So and to be honest, we have been so like at the early adopter thing. That's why I'm catching that up, because Sales Communications is an early adaptive company. We are doing mostly the things before everybody else is doing. So now we are just adapting the thing that, okay, this is what is happening. We accept it, and now it's time to move forward. And but what it does is that we needed to understand what is it for me. And if somebody calls me at this stage as a salesperson or tries to get a meeting or sells this is not very good time to be a salesman if you are not adapting to that personal or business crisis management situation. So see what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was my personal thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. I suppose just to add my 50 cents to that, aligned with that, Yanni, like I'm a salesperson myself, right? I sell HubSpot product to clients. And what I saw was happening is like, obviously I have my pipeline of deals that I'm working on, right? And when the crisis really kicked in, I saw a huge part of that pipeline just dying out, right? Like a lot of companies moving into that depression phase, they were not ready to continue. They came back to me exactly as I said and said, Thomas, I'll talk to you in 3 months. We've frozen all assets at the moment. All right. With that group, that is completely understandable. I'm not keeping that sales process running. I've kind of moved them into a nurture phase now. I've tried to run, and I'll give you a few examples of that later on today's presentation. But basically, I'm looking to see how can I add value for them in the short term. For example, new prospects. They're not ready to buy at the moment. That's understandable. HubSpot have our free product. They can get started with that. They can start organizing. And then we can touch base again over the summer when they're ready to have that conversation, right? So I've kind of moved away from that sales conversation with them to look at how can I support you in the short term here, just without having for you guys to move on with that sales process. That was one part of my pipeline. My other experience was all of a sudden, a ton of new opportunities came into my pipeline and those were with companies that were already in this adapt phase, right? So that was like a big part of my sales day is selling CRM systems, right? And a lot of customers, a lot of companies, they've moved away from everyone working in the field and being in the office to everyone having to work from home and realizing, man, we need that CRM system in place now in order to keep running our sales processes. So all of a sudden, a lot of companies that have been talking about that CRM system for the last few years, bang, now it has to happen, and they reach out. So I've kind of had a shift in my pipeline there, and I kind of work with two different groups of customers there and try to nurture them based on what adds value to them, where they are on this grief cycle, right? I hope that gives a bit of perspective on it. Otherwise, keep the questions going here, right? Now, this is just another view of this grief cycle, right? It's just to kind of, we're looking at these companies in the depression phase that are looking to survive. We have the adapters, and then we have a group that is actually also growing their business at the moment, right? These are just examples of the different industries. So I suppose the industries that are suffering at the moment in general is travel, like events, brick and mortar, retail, restaurants, of course, right? That is, in general, it's not everyone, but that is, you know, lines of businesses that is in a survival mode at the moment. That's where we try to go in. We have a big group of existing customers in HubSpot there. We try to add value to them. How can we assist them at the moment, right?
One big question is a hint. In Finland, a lot of companies are using a tool called Vaino. And there's an integration together with HubSpot and Vaino. And if you want to know, we know that the travel, events, brick and mortar, retail, restaurants, they're in a big trouble at the moment. And the total end, there is different types of companies who is doing all right. Now it's the time to use the data. The businesses that has a strong balance sheet and they are growing. You know, if you look at the data, businesses, strong balance sheet and a growing industry. And they are not on the industries which are big effect on the businesses. So it depends, of course, from your business perspective, because you can do business with the companies that is actually in a surviving mode. Depends what you're actually selling, but it needs to be this business seller alignment going on.
100%. And what I will suggest to you guys is you do the same analysis with your install base, so your group of existing clients, as well as the new business that you're addressing, right? We all from different industries, but you can run this exercise yourself, right? Within that, those potential customers and existing customers you have, who falls into the survive group, who's adapting, and who's actually growing their business? Like, look at, we're on Zoom today. Like Zoom are booming their business these days, right? HubSpot ourselves, we probably fall into that adapt group, right? We are providing the SaaS services at the moment. Oh, sorry, our customers fall into that group, right? So we are seeing some adoption, but we also seeing some that are slowing down a little at the moment, right? So it'd be well worth your while to kind of try and group the different industries that you're working with and identify, okay, how do we work with them going forward? To give an example with HubSpot, for example, we have moved, like we have a good few restaurants on HubSpot in the lower tiers, right? They're suffering at the moment. And some of them need to move more of their marketing online. For example, if they're starting to do home delivery instead of bringing people in. So we've started moving some of the features that are typically on the more expensive solutions in HubSpot, we moved them down to our starter tier, simply to help assist them going forward in this survival mode, right? So that's an example from our side on how we try to add value to those existing customers and potential new customers that is in a difficult place at the moment. Now, just a quick note on how we would run the sales process as well. What we typically do in HubSpot, and again, this is the same for most companies, you can probably recognize this, right? But when you run a sales process with a prospect, you typically try and balance your conversation around, one, you're kind of building the dream with the customer. Like they have an ideal state they would like to reach, and you have the service or the product that can help them there, right? That is part of your communication, your sales process with them. You're heading towards this. That's the goal. The other part of that balance is what happens if they do nothing, right? So they're in a certain state at the moment. If they don't take on your services or your product, if they don't move, what happens then? So that's, I suppose, classic sales process, right? You're kind of balancing that, the goal you're aiming for, but also the pain of inaction. What we see at the moment is probably a little less, again, with most companies, it's a little less the dream we're building, a little less growth, a little more focused around, okay, we're in a crisis, we need to act now. If we keep doing things the way we've always done it, we're going to lose at this stage. So that's what we're looking at here. We in HubSpot are moving our sales conversations a little more towards loss aversion, right? A little more towards, okay, you're struggling at the moment. How can we help you in this situation? Make sure you can still run your business. That might apply to your line of business as well, that we need to adjust our focus a little around how we help them get through this. So be empathetic. What does it mean to sell with empathy? But there's kind of three things to focus in on, right? First of all, put yourself in their position, right? All of a sudden, people are working from home. They're trying to homeschool their kids at the same time. They have, you know, cash flow might be a challenge. Just healthy is going to be a challenge at this stage, right? Remember to put yourself in their shoes. When that is said, we also want to distinguish empathy with sympathy. Like a lot of the prospects you're probably talking to, they are very much in the depression phase, right? And that is going to be their talk track. And while we acknowledge that, it's important that we don't go along with that, right? We want to stay as the trusted advisor here. So again, that's what I do within the SaaS industry. I listen to, but I acknowledge the pain, I understand the pain, but I don't fall into that. Like I kind of try to talk to them about what can we do in order to overcome that. That's the same approach you want to take within your industries and the services and products that you're providing, right? That's what we need to remember. Whatever industry you're in and whatever you guys sell, you're the expert here, right? So you have to stay that trusted advisor with them. So that's why we want to be able to be very empathetic, but maybe not move into that sympathetic space where we move into that talk track with them. One key tool we use here in order to run these conversations is what we call the layer technique. And that's what we're going to go through now. So layer, L-A-E-R, basically stands for listen, acknowledge, explore, and respond. Now, this is a technique I would use all year round, not just when we're in a crisis, but I think it's even more important when we're in these times where we really need to understand the challenges that our prospects are faced with, right? I'm just checking the time here. Okay. So first of all, we have to listen when we talk to a prospect, and we have to do this without making assumptions. To give an example, when I'm on the phone to my mom, I make so many assumptions up front that I barely hear what she's saying, right? I need to put that away. It's the same when I talk to prospects. Prospects within specific industries, I might have assumptions of what their situation is going to be. I need to put that away and really understand what the challenges are that they feel that they're facing at the moment, right? Then I need to acknowledge this. And by acknowledge that, I mean, I would summarize what they have told me and ask them afterwards, did I understand that correctly? The reason I do that is, one, I want to make sure I do understand what they're saying, but also two, if they're in the very depression phase here, everything is probably a little all over the place for them. So the things they tell you might not be as structured for them. So if you can start summarizing it, if you can start helping them list that, you'll help them build structure of their challenges as well. And that'll be their first step out of that depression phase and towards an adapt phase. So that summarized piece is very, very important here. Then you want to explore. When you've summarized what the challenges are, you got confirmation, yeah, you've understood that correctly. You want to start understanding in further detail what those challenges are. So based on that, you start asking questions and you learn more. And now, what most of us do is we jump in and respond. That's what we want to avoid. When we are exploring, we want to go back to the listen phase and then acknowledge and keep this triangle going, right? So we get further and further down, get a clearer and clearer understanding of their specific challenges. Again, to make sure that when we first start responding, that we are adding real value to the situation that they are standing in. That's key here. What I suggest is, like, print this out. I'll share the slides with you after. Print it out when you have your calls, especially now when we all have remote meetings. We can sit and move the finger across this sheet, right, to make sure that we follow this structure. This is something that is key in our sales process here in HubSpot, and I see it with a lot of our partners as well. Right. That's kind of the psychology we've walked through here. I'd now like to just move in and talk to you about, just give you examples of the framework that HubSpot is using when we address the situation we're in at the moment. Are we good for time, Yanni? Is there any questions that we should address before I move on here?
I think we're fine with time, but I have to, if you put that last slide, the layer technique.
Sure.
There's a normal, without this crisis and situation that we are living, salespeople are too fast to respond. They are responding faster than they are listening to the customer, and especially the younger ones. Older salespeople, they understand that we have to spend time with the customer, we have to acknowledge, we have to explore, and keep on digging and digging and digging. And the younger people are too fast for going on forward. What I really find really interesting, that when we are doing sales processes, because you cannot, you can't run your sales without the sales process. That for example, when we are talking about when do we give solution to the customer, a lot of companies are doing it really fast, and then they suffer at the end of the sales process because their hit rate is very low. And when we start to see that, okay, why is happening? One of the main reasons is that we are offering something that the customer cannot buy, don't need, or will not buy. And that's something to understand, especially in these times, and when you are selling to the depression phase and people underneath that, before that phase, it's totally different type of thing. So this is my point. Yeah. So it's there's a couple of comments here.
Sure.
Customers do not give so much time to average salespeople. That's the one thing. So now we have like an egg and a chicken problem. Like, okay, we have to listen, but we don't have time. So do you have anything thoughts about that?
Yeah, I can talk to you about how we deal with that in HubSpot. Like, when we talk to prospects, this is a bit of a reversed psychology, right? But when I get a prospect in, have a first call with them, my focus is not to sell to them. My focus is to disqualify them. I basically spend the first call identifying why I should close the sales process with them, right? Because I know my time as a salesperson is like, that's my only asset that I have. So customers that are unlikely to purchase, I need to close that sales process with them as early as in any way possible. And I explain this when I talk to a customer. I tell them, I'm going to spend the first meeting with you running what I call discovery. I'm not going to give you any solutions. I'm only going to interview you, because I am never going to sell to you if I don't have a full understanding of what your situation is, what your goals, your plans, your challenges are.
I think and that goes pretty much every online sales interaction. Whether you are selling whatever, it doesn't matter what you are selling. There's a lot of misunderstanding that it's an industry specific type of thing. Of course, there's industry specific. If you go into a store and you want to buy a bread, the sales is done probably before you enter into the store, and you can only buy these breads which are available. and that pick and choose what you want. But if you're talking about B2B solution sales and you get online leads and you're selling online and you get a lot of leads, I think you nailed the point there that you have to disqualify them out. And this is really hard for people to understand. It's always because we are really outbounding. It's about, you know, us telling non-useful information to people, which we think it's very good. What our product? What is the features? What is the benefits? Would you like to buy, Mr. Customer? And with online sales, when you get 1,000 leads, 500 leads, and I know that there's a lot of people who can say that you cannot take on a B2B, when you are selling B2B products, you cannot take 100 or even 1,000 leads. But actually, when you are doing the things right, you will get them if your total accessible market is big enough. So then you cannot sell to everybody. There's no point. The disqualifying out is a big part of the sales process, which I think is very 2020-ish for Finns, because a lot of sales processes is for telling non-usable information, which is not value for the people. So this is my point. I get excited about that. So put it on the chat page if you disagree or agree with me, because I want to hear your thoughts.
That's what people are chatting. Just to add my comments to that as well, I'd say definitely if you have a big lead inflow, disqualification is important. But I'd say if you only have a few leads coming through, disqualification is even more important. If I take myself as an example, I have a very set sales structure, right? When I have a prospect coming in, first I'm running a 15-minute connect call with them, where I'm disqualifying as much as I can. It's a success for me if I disqualify them, I tell them this is why I'm not going to move forward to you, and I go on to the next. If I can see there is an opportunity and they see the same, we arrange a discovery call. When we run that and we are still all interested, we are typically moving into a demo. When that has been run and we're all still happy to go forward, we're moving into the proposal phase. These stages are very time consuming. And that is why I'm very, very focused on disqualifying in the beginning, because all that time that I spend on the discovery call, preparing for the demo, running the demo, preparing for the proposal, running the proposal, that is time that I could have spent on identifying new leads. So I'd say if you have few leads coming through, the disqualification is even more important, because then you're going to need more time to source potential leads. Right. Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. So Yanni, I'm sure you'll butt in whenever something comes in.
Yeah, just go on. We're fine.
So let's have a look at the structure. I realize we're a little over time here, guys, so bear with me. I'll run through this, right? This is just to give you the structure that we here in HubSpot are using through this crisis time. So you see there's kind of 4 points, and this is both with existing customers as well as potential new customers. First of all, we check in. In that check-in, and that's typically a call, we've spent the first call identifying where are they on the grief cycle, right? So we can identify our approach based on that. If they're in the deep depression, we're going to add value to help them out of that. If they're in the adapt phase, it's a very different conversation, right? Then when we identify that, that's when we start explaining how we help businesses, right? Kind of our pitch to them in a sense, right? But in the sense that where we go, this is how we work with businesses like yourselves. Then we move into determining what is the prospect's priorities at this stage. And then last but not least, what is very important is we go in and isolate the objections that are at the moment. There's always objections in a sales process, but especially in a time of crisis, there will be objections. We've identified 5 groups actually 3 groups of typical objections, and we've prepared upfront how do we handle them. Again, that's an exercise I really, it would be great for yourselves to do so you're prepared to run these conversations. I'll give you examples of what that looks like now. So in the check-in phase, that's when you reach out. And again, that's to a new prospect as well as your customer, right? The first thing we want to understand is, how are you impacted personally? Like you all of a sudden working from home, you're homeschooling the kids, you're this, that, and the other. What does your personal situation look like? Then we want to understand, what is the business impact? Like, are you guys in the travel industry, is all you're dealing with cancellations at the moment? Or are you in the video conferencing industry and your business is absolutely booming, right? But we need to understand where you are on that spectrum, again, when we look at the grief cycle. Then when we get a good understanding of that, interviewing them on where they are at, that's when we can identify what our approach is going to be. And again, if they're at the bottom of the depression and say it's an existing customer you're talking to, now is probably not the time to see, can you cross-sell and upsell them? Now is the time to identify, how can I add value to that situation that they're in? How can I build that relationship with them? And again, on the other side, if they're in the adapt phase, if they're looking to move forward, if they're looking to change the way they do business, well, they're probably ready to look at what you can provide them with at this stage, right? So identify your approach based on that initial check-in that you're doing with them. Then you move in, based on the approach that you have chosen, then you talk to them about, this is how we work with companies like you that is in the same situation. These are just examples of how HubSpot work with companies and how HubSpot partners typically work with companies. It can be very different for yourselves, but again, you have some core services or products that you're providing. How can you position that to the clients based on if they're in a phase where they just need help, or if they're in that adapt phase where they're ready to look at new opportunities? And then when you position that to them, then go back to your layer again, or back to your discovery, as we would call it, right? Understand what are their priorities and try to connect it to what services or products that you can provide, right? Then we're moving into the fourth phase. And again, we're coming back to kind of the disqualification that I would be doing, and I know Yanni is doing his sales process as well, is we want to identify objections straight away. It's not something we want to leave to the very end. We want to identify it on day one. And we want to isolate that and understand how can we help them overcome those objections. For HubSpot, we have three main groups of objections that we see at the moment. One is time. We have no time to evaluate, or we have no time to implement. We're dealing with this crisis we are running into at the moment. We can't look at anything new. The other is money. Again, we mentioned that example a couple of times. All our budgets are frozen. We have reduced budgets. We have huge cash flow complications at the moment. We're just not ready to invest at all. That's the second category of objections that we are experiencing at the moment. The third is commitment. I can't sign a contract at the moment. Like typically with HubSpot, we sign 12-month contracts. There's not a chance I could sign a 12-month contract at the moment. I don't know what the future looks like with the crisis that we're in at the moment, right? So we've identified these three main groups of objections, and you see we have a couple of categories for each, right? So what we have done then is, and you can do the same exercise for your company, like what are the main objections that you're running into at the moment, and how can you prepare a way of addressing these objections? And I just want to give you an example of one of these objections and how we handle it in HubSpot, right? So we mentioned one of them is time. We have no time to evaluate anything at the moment. We're preparing a talk track. When we get that objection, we're preparing an offer that is relevant to that specific objection. And then if they're not ready to go with that offer, which can be completely understandable, then we have a backup play. So, talk track. Basically, here I'm acknowledging what they're telling me. I fully understand it's busy at the moment. You don't have time to prioritize this at the moment. So talk to me about what are the immediate campaigns that are taking priority. Here you have to remember part of what we are selling is marketing services. So that's what I would go in and kind of identify, this is something I can help with. These are some campaigns you just need to get up and running right now. Say it's a company that is used to running physical events, for example. They can't do that anymore. So they need to move those campaigns online. Is there something immediate I can help you with there? Right? Then I have an offer prepared for people who's in that. That can be a rep-driven, me being the rep here, needs analysis. I can help them do an analysis of their current situation and how we can get them up and running with a quick campaign that can help them here in the short term, right? If they're not ready to do that, that's when I have my backup play. Again, we provide a product, SaaS solutions that we are selling. If they're not ready to engage with me in that and look at what they can purchase, I will push them towards our free portal, and I'll go, I fully understand, like, this is a challenging time. It's not the right time to be looking into this. Why don't, there's a few things that you can solve through our free portal. I'll give you some guidelines to what that looks like. So again, as you see here, we have an objection, and I have my 3-step procedure for addressing that objection. Again, I'm in the SaaS industry. I provide products here. Try and take that in and identify your own industry, your own company. What services are you providing? And what objections are you meeting? And how can you build out, you know, a response, a 3-step response like I have here that you can use yourselves? Right, guys, that is what I had prepared today, right? So we basically talked about the psychology of selling, the cycle that your prospects might be in that we need to be aware of, and also give an example of the framework that HubSpot is using here. Now, let's open it up here.
Do we have any questions? There's a one question that will there be a recording, and yes, it will be on DigitalSalesDay.fi, probably later in the evening, at latest tomorrow. Depends how we can get that there. Somebody says that how do you tackle those objections? But I think that you answered to that question already. One thing I find really interesting about that structure is that you are using playbooks, type of playbooks, like you have structured, like what are the objections going, and then you've written those answers there. You have the talk track, offer, and backup play, kind of 3-dimensional way of doing the playbooks. Where do you have those playbooks? How do salespeople gain access to those playbooks?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. So just, I suppose, first of all, just to talk about playbooks and then where it sits. Like HubSpot is, we are hiring salespeople every single day. We're developing our sales force, and a lot of you are probably hiring sales reps as well. And also people within other parts of the organization, right? And a big challenge here is to, when you get a new person in, how do you get that person up and running as fast as in any way possible? How do you make them productive? Like for us, for example, when we hire a new sales rep, if that person starts selling after 3 months or after 2 months instead of after 4 months, that has a huge impact on our annual turnover, right? So that's something we really want to optimize for. One thing we do is we bring them through extensive training, of course, but the other thing we do is utilize playbooks, right? So in HubSpot, we are selling a marketing hub, a sales hub, a service hub, and a CMS. That's a pretty complex portfolio of products, right? And when you're new coming in, that's a lot to take in. So we've developed playbooks for all the different products that we are selling. And a playbook is basically a script that you can open up. So if you're working in HubSpot's sales CRM, you've bought a sales hub. When I'm jumping on a discovery call with Yanni, who has done a bit of research on my website, I can see from his behavior, again, we can track that on HubSpot, I can see he has only been looking at our marketing solutions. He's been reading blogs about marketing. He has downloaded an ebook about marketing. Okay, when I jump on that call with Yanni, I'm opening my playbook for interviews regarding marketing, right? That is where his interest is going to be. So I then have outlined the questions that are relevant to ask. I've outlined what is the information that I need to understand in order to drive this sales process. So again, if I'm a new sales rep, I'm ready to run that conversation with Yanni, even though I'm relatively new in the door. And I can take notes in this, and all those notes will be saved on Yanni's profile in our CRM system. So again, I can return back to that as I continue the conversation. Or in HubSpot, for example, we have BDRs, so business development representatives, typically relatively junior sales guys that run the initial call. And then if there is an opportunity, they hand it over to a more senior rep. Well, if they've used that playbook, all the data that they have, or all the information they've gathered will live on that contact timeline. So when they pass it over to me, for example, I quickly get a full overview of, okay, what is our understanding of Yanni at the moment? How should I drive this conversation?
And you can also, when you're doing playbooks, you can use them in role plays. So I know that, well, you're Danish, I'm Finnish. There's a lot of Finns in the audience. And how do you feel the role plays when a sales training? It's like I don't want to go there, and it's like I'm not an actor, and so on. There's a role play. One is a seller, one is the customer, and they are doing this role play, and that role play is put on that playbook, and you can use them on sales coaching. And then when people are filling out the playbooks, the information on their actual sales, you can actually get some data how you're actually doing on those sales processes. But do you use a lot of role plays? Do you do role plays at HubSpot?
Yeah, constantly. Like, it's a very important part of our hiring process. When we bring in new sales reps, they are role playing constantly. When we bring new partners on board, like you probably remember back in the day as well, Yanni, when sales communications came on board, we were sales training with you. Role plays were extremely important. And again, that's where we were using the likes of playbooks as well. And another thing, like we work with different cultures as well. And that's where these guidelines can be important. Like I'm Danish living in Ireland. Danes and Irish people are very similar in the sense that we talk all the time and we ask questions all the time. We're very quick like that. And I know a Finnish audience, like I'm working with all of Scandinavia, we have probably a difference in our approach there. I have learned over time that I ask a question to a Finnish audience, if it had been Danes, I would have 10 people jumping up and talking all over the place, right? When the Finns, sometimes I need to give it 10, 15 seconds, just a pause, and then I'll get a reply. And again, that's the kind of thing that we want to work with when we build out these guidelines through, for example, playbooks to help our sales reps.
Yeah. I have the Finns are probably
anyone there.
yeah, but I know that's because Finns are probably the only nation in the world who can answer to an open-ended question, yes or no. so Eddie, there's one question from Tero. Do you have any tips on breaking the ice to get even the first call with the prospect, especially how the no time objection comes already when suggesting a meeting? This is very outboundy, by the way. This sounds like I'm calling. This is outboundy way of doing things. Yeah. And we're more like inboundy, like people are asking to get meetings. So inbound salespeople don't have a problem to get meetings. The problem is that you get wrong meetings for your sales, and that's the thing. But anyway, do you have anything on that? Especially now that I don't have any time. You want to book a meeting? Anything on that? I think that's a final because we have to wrap up soon. So yeah,
quick one on that, because obviously we're working with inbound leads. A lot of them are ready to have conversations, but all of us sometimes have to be a little more outboundy. We might have some leads coming through that has just checked the website. They might not have been downloading material and all that, so they might not be as warm as we would like, right? Like I come across those as well, and I need to reach out to them. One thing I always address straight away when I'm in a conversation is, when we reach out, we can sometimes have like the prospect up here and the sales rep down here, and you try to get their attention. You want to talk to them, and they know that. So the first thing I'm addressing is I need to have a balanced communication with them. So whether this is outbound-ish outreach or complete inbound, the first thing I always do is to go, listen guys, I have been looking at your company. I can see you're very similar to a lot of companies that we help today, right? So the reason I'm reaching out is I just want to understand, I want to qualify with you if we can potentially help you going forward. So what I would love to just take 10 minutes with you today in order to qualify this with you. And if both you and I can see by the end of the call, there's not really a fit here, let's leave it. There's no point for me to move forward. I need to spend my time with prospects that is relevant to the products and services that I can deliver. The same for yourself. Like, you don't want to be talking to someone that, is not relevant for your business. So again, as I talked about earlier at the top of the call, I'm working with disqualifying everyone I'm talking to. And I'm making that, I'm outlining that to them straight away. I'm telling him, I'm here to understand. Does it make sense for you and me to talk together? Does it make sense for us to work together going forward? And if not, let's make sure we don't waste each other's time. So I'm moving away from being down here and them up here to have a balanced conversation between two professionals that are looking to identify if they should work together or not. That kind of be my overall approach.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you guys very much. I hope that this answers your question, and we will get the recording to everybody, and you can send this all over your world and make sure that everybody in your company who is doing the sales will get this. And remember to go to DigitalSalesDay.fi and download the digital business card for yourself and the package for how to sell online. Thanks very much. Thanks, Tomas, and good day, and stay safe. And 2 meters, you know, from the other person. And this is not time to hug and kiss and all that. But anyway, see you later. Good. Bye.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.